Welcome to the Gear Talk podcast, everybody. I'm so pumped to have you here to talk about my favorite topic, which is all the latest and greatest and most expensive in gear. I'm your host, Geraldo Giraldo. And today on the show, we're going to talk about all the best Boxing Week, Black Friday, Christmas, New Year's deals so that you can spend every single dollar that you make shooting photos and videos on gear. And I actually don't want you guys to do that. And luckily, this isn't the Gear Talk podcast. Although we are going to be talking about gear for the next, 20 or 30 minutes. And I am, of course, your photographer, Jared Poirier, and I'm very excited that you've decided to join us here for an excellent episode on gear. We're actually going to be discussing the best, the mediocrest, if that's a word, and the worst gear that I've personally used in my career as a photographer and a videographer. But before we can get into any of that, we need to thank our sponsor, which is CloudSpot, the easiest way for photographers to deliver and sell their photos online. You can experience beautiful galleries, easy downloads, and integrated sales. And let me just tell you guys, ever since I've been using CloudSpot, I have to admit that it has saved me a lot of time, and I definitely recommend it for photographers. It's a great way to impress your clients and get back some of your time because, as we know, time is money. And speaking of money, we're talking about gear today, and it's important not to waste your money on unnecessary gear. I was inspired to do this episode when I listened to a podcast by another great podcaster, photographer. He's been in the game a little bit longer than me, and he has quite a bit of wisdom to share. And that is, of course, Casey with the Nerdy Photographer podcast. I definitely recommend that you guys go and check out his episode. He did an episode all about, not being seduced by all of this like Black Friday sales and all of this stuff, and really, putting out some strategic information on how you should spend your money as a photographer and videographer. Really appreciated his episode. Probably the best takeaway from that episode for me personally was just like with all of these deals going on and sales and stuff like that, it can be pretty tempting to want to spend some money. And the best thing that Casey said was, it's okay to buy some gear and take advantage of these deals. Just make sure that it's something that you were going to buy already, right? Like, don't go spending extra money that you don't necessarily need to spend or maybe don't even necessarily have, right? Like, certainly you don't want to be going into debt because it's Black Friday. So yeah, I really appreciated those insights from Casey, and it inspired me to make this episode. I just want to give a couple of caveats here, and then we're going to get into some of the gear. I'm super excited to get into some of the gear talk here. But I do just want to mention that all of this stuff is my personal experience. I'm only an expert in these things to a certain degree. Please don't get upset if I say that a piece of gear didn't work that well. For me personally, it's all just about what I've used on video and photo shoots, what I've had a good experience with, what I haven't. At the end of the day, some of this is just going to be a matter of taste, Some people like to shoot with a wired mic. Some people like a wireless mic. Some people like to shoot Sony, and some people are wrong. All right, so let's talk about the first piece of gear here. We're going to talk about audio. So let's get into audio here. We're going to talk about 3 different lav mic systems that I've used in the past and kind of rank them and go through some of the upsides and downsides of each one of these things. So First up in the not good, disappointing category here, we have the Aperture A-Lav mic. I'm going to say that's the worst lapel system that I've ever used personally. It got me through some stuff when I was first starting out shooting, and it served its purpose, but I had a lot of weird problems, and I understand why this particular system actually, if you try to look it up online, you probably won't be able to find it anywhere. You'll probably have a very, very hard time locating this particular mic system to purchase. I spent like $80 on it or something like that. I can't exactly remember. But yeah, just like the quality isn't great. And one thing that was really weird about it is it was prone to picking up like radio signals and stuff like that. Like when I was shooting outside, if I had especially if I didn't like straighten out the cord enough, I guess it would get tangled and start picking up the radio. And I learned later that if you have like a battery powered mic rather than just one that plugs right into your camera, that's supposed to help with like interference and stuff like that. So, like for around $80, you can't expect too much. Yeah, this thing was kind of a disappointment. The next one that I want to talk about in the kind of, decent mid-range category here, the Saramonic Lav system, the one that I had actually has like the 2 mics that you can put in, although, it has not great audio when you're just doing 1 input, so you can probably guess how the audio is when you're doing 2 inputs. Kind of splits them like 1 to each channel. But the one that I had was and great name here, guys. You really nailed it on the name. UW Mic 9 Saramonic Lav system. I picked this thing up for like $500, something like that, 500 plus tax, I think. Again, it got me through. Like I did a lot of shoots with this system and it wasn't horrible. I can't say that it was like the worst thing that I've ever experienced in my life. But I did sell it and sold it to a very nice person. He was actually a Mormon guy and he wanted to use it for his church. So I guess that my Saramonic Lav is living a new life there for what that's worth. I also want to talk about the Sennheiser G4 Lav system. What I'm actually recording this podcast on today, I rented this for a shoot last night, is the G4 that's sitting on top of my camera body right now. Obviously, I am not using a lav, though. I'm using the microphone attachment. That's one of the really cool things about these Sennheiser systems is that you can hook up all sorts of different attachments to them, right? You're not just limited to doing the lav thing. You can have other accessories, other types of mics that'll sync up with the same system. As you guys can hear, the quality's it's pretty damn good. I'm recording it in my house and I have a big open space and stuff like that, so it's probably a little bit echoey right now. But I find the as compared to other systems that I've used, especially other lapel mics, I find it sounds pretty freaking amazing. And there's a squelch feature as well that will cut out background noise. Just, feature packed and really worth it for that price point, right? Which is expensive. The new ones I think are around $800, $850, something like that. So you are going to be spending some money, but you're going to get amazing quality. And I haven't really had that much issues with this system. Although I did have some weird popping going on with it last night. So I don't know. We'll mention that. But still, the Sennheiser G4 Lav system comes highly recommended from your photographer, Jared Poirier, right here. Next, we're going to get into some video lights. So I'm super excited to talk about this category. Something that is sometimes overlooked by people, right, is the importance of having good lighting. It's not enough just to have a good camera body. You have to have good light. You have to know how to manage the light and all of that. I'm not going to get deeply into that right now and bore you guys. with actual like theory of frickin' shooting photos and stuff, because we're here to talk about the gear, brother. So the worst video light that I've used, I have to say, sorry to all you cubists out there, but the Lume Cube, it's like a wallet-sized video light. It's just not great. It costs $115. That's pretty expensive. It is bicolor. It is dimmable. It says 14 hours of battery life. In my experience, that is certainly not true. I never got 14 hours out of one of these things. Maybe 4 hours, maybe, but definitely not 14. And these things, I really put them to the test. We used them on some like kitchen shoots and stuff like that. So they were pretty prone to overheating. Yeah, there's like little accessories that come with them and stuff like that so that you can stick them to the wall or different things. But honestly, I wouldn't recommend picking up a Lume Cube. In the middle, kind of, acceptable, decent category here, the Q5, Quasar Science Q5. It's like a 7-inch LED bar. If you're watching this on YouTube, I've got it in the back here, just providing a little ambiance lighting in the back. This thing is a pretty decent little light. Goes for about $130. I think I paid less than that. Again, bicolor, dimmable. You can do the more orange tones. You can do more white tones if you want. There's a few steps in between there. I think 4 steps. 4 hours at full. That's what it says. It advertises that you can run this thing full power for 4 hours. In my experience, even longer. Like I've definitely gotten like 5, 6, maybe even 7 hours out of these things. So I'm pretty impressed with them. They are magnetic, so that helps a lot, right? Like when you just need quick light on a shoot, and if there's any like good metal around, you just like click it on there. It's pretty freaking functional. I would say that the heat tolerance on these as well is really good, right? As I said before, use these things on a lot of kitchen shoots, and I don't think I ever overheated one. Definitely like drained the battery on them and stuff like that. Definitely smashed them on the ground a lot. Dropped them a lot. And these things are super durable. Like if I grabbed that thing, you would see like the chips and stuff that are in it. I've smashed it up pretty good, and it still works, and it charges well. I do have to mention though, the firmware thing is whack as hell. Like this is why this isn't higher on the list here. You have to like bring it to the place that you bought it to get a firmware update. There's a whole mess with that. You need like a special type of cord. And I will also say that I had a bunch of problems with the second one of these things that I bought with like the firmware and things not working properly. So I only really use the one. That's probably why it's sort of in the middle. Okay, next I want to talk about the Godox 260C, the best video light that I've used personally, at least that I own. Anyways, that's what I'm shooting this video on right now. I've got one of them right here. I have another one over there in the box. They're pretty fantastic. They are $115, which is a great value. I do have to say that when you go to buy batteries, like the batteries with a charger is like $200, so that kind of sucks. But you don't necessarily need the batteries. They are bicolor, they are dimmable, they are very bright and quite large, 36 by 24 centimeters. That ability to add the battery is pretty sweet. One thing that I've experienced too is like you have those cords, and then people might be tripping over the cords and stuff. Can avoid that just by using battery powered lights. I will say one thing about these lights is that the way that they design the attachment on the back, they're kind of wobbly. They move around a little bit, like if you kind of shake them and stuff. If that bothers you, if you want it to be such a sturdy light, such a sturdy piece of gear, that might be annoying to you. It doesn't really bother me at all, but just something that I thought I would mention. And, for $115, man, like you're getting a big panel light that's going to light things up nicely. And I just think that that's a great deal. I scooped up 2 of these things. Like I said, they don't come with stands. Probably Godox sells stands. I already had a bunch of stands, so I was already good to go. It is time for the main event, which is, of course, camera bodies. And I've owned a few camera bodies in my time. I've shot on quite a few camera bodies. I don't know why that sounds kind of dirty. But the first camera that I want to talk about here, unfortunately, in the worst camera that I've personally used / owned, the Canon T5i. And let me tell you guys, Canon T5i isn't that bad a camera. I had an okay experience with it. The fact that it wasn't that great for me was kind of my fault. I bought it used. I didn't really know anything about cameras when I bought it used, so it had a dead pixel from the moment that I bought it. And I really didn't really know what that meant at the time and stuff like that. These days I would have done a lot more research. I would have noticed a freaking dead pixel on my camera. These crop sensor Canon DSLRs, they still sell pretty well. I think there's like a T7, maybe like a T8 by now. I don't really understand why people still continue to buy these things though, considering that, there's mirrorless cameras now. I would much rather, if I was just starting out today, have a mirrorless like a Canon M50 Mark II or like something in the Sony A6000 series. You'd be able to get something like that for around $1,000, kind of the same price as if you were to buy one of these Rebel cameras new. So I would definitely recommend going that route over getting like a T whatever I. So for camera bodies in the middle, acceptable level, we have the Canon 6D Mark II. I own this camera for 3 years. Shot tons of photos, tons of videos with this camera. I still think that it is a good photography camera, right? Especially if you have enough light, if you have a flash, if you're just shooting in daylight, you're gonna get good photos. They're not gonna be grainy. I think it has 26 megapixels or something like that, so it's passable. On the video side is where it really fails, right? To be honest, the video quality isn't great. You don't have any 4K, and you're paying when I bought it, it was $1,400. Now apparently they're $1,800, which is just crazy to me. Yeah, definitely buy a mirrorless if you're gonna spend freaking $1,800. But they don't even have a headphone jack, right? That was the thing that annoyed me so much. Right now I'm recording on my Sony A7 IV. And I have the mic set up, I have the headphones on, I can hear everything perfectly, I can monitor the audio. If there's anything weird that happens, I can do a little bit of retake and stuff like that. So yeah, the 6D Mark II, it's not a bad camera, but not the greatest camera I've ever owned either. And speaking of the greatest camera I've ever owned, it's this camera right here that I'm shooting this video on, the Sony A7 IV. I got this thing this year, and I've honestly been completely loving it. I haven't even pushed it as far as it could go. I've never even shot the highest quality. I hate to admit it, but I've never even shot the highest quality video footage that I could potentially shoot on this thing. 10-bit 4K. You can even do up to 120 frames per second HD. Of course, you can do 60 frames per second in 4K, so you can still do some slow-mo stuff. 33 megapixels, big honkin' sensor on this thing. Of course, you have the Sony E mount, which is just the greatest mount that's ever been gifted to man by the gods. And you also have great autofocus. You have animal eye tracking, all sorts of crazy features, really just like a feature packed camera for that $3,300, something like that I paid for it. And I do have to say that ever since I got this camera, like just the quality of my work has gone way up, and my ability to sell myself as a photographer, as a videographer, based off of my previous work, based off of my portfolio, and the quality thereof. There's been all of those types of changes ever since I got this camera. So I would definitely recommend looking into the Sony Alpha series. It's pretty awesome. Okay, let's talk a little bit about lenses. And the worst lens is going to be an easy one. The worst lens that anyone can own is the kit lens that they try to sell you on by putting it in a kit with the camera. If I could give you guys a piece of advice, never, ever, ever, ever buy the camera with the kit lens. Just buy that camera body. There's like a million better lenses out there that you can get. And that's kind of all I have to say on that one. A medium rare lens that I liked quite a bit. Rocked this on my Canon 6D Mark II like pretty much all the time. My Canon 17-40 f4. I've since sold that one. Bought it used for like $700. I think they still try to sell them for like $1,000, which is outrageous. But yeah, you could probably these days pretty easily pick one up for around $500 or even less, maybe $300. At f4, you get a little bit of bokeh. You get quite a bit of light. Footage isn't like grainy or anything like that. It's decently sharp, pretty good photos, decent range of focal length. That 17 is pretty wide. That 40 is like passable, barely passable for like portraits and stuff like that. It's not quite a 50 or a 70, but it's like, okay, it's a little bit wide. But it was a good lens, and I was happy with it for the time that I had it. But my favorite lens is the lens that I'm shooting this video on right now, which is the Sigma 24-70 f2.8. Freaking love this lens. Great bokeh, tons and tons of light. The 2.8 is amazing. And like something that people overlook a lot with the lens is just like how it feels, when you're zooming and stuff like that, like the smoothness of the zooms and all of that, from the user experience, but also how your footage looks, right? When you're like using that zoom and even like the focus ring and stuff like that, just all feels really good. Super Pro for around $1,000. You're getting a 2.8 lens, and you can shoot like a little bit wide, and then all types of like nice portrait and lifestyle stuff with this lens. I've been shooting like concerts with it. Yeah, food and beverage, like everything. Okay, so now it's time to get into gimbals, and as a video shooter, I love myself a gimbal every once in a while. I don't actually own one right now. I rented the Ronin S3 last night for a shoot. So I'll let you guys know how I felt about that one in a minute. But it's not at the bottom of my list. So there's that. The bottom of my list for gimbals here is going to unfortunately have to be, and no one knows how to say this word, Zuan? Sure. Crane 2S is, I believe, the one that I used. That one goes for $700. Like, it was fine. It's a gimbal, right? Like, it holds up a camera. It was like pretty sturdy and stuff like that. It was actually quite intuitive, I'll be honest. Quite intuitive to use and pretty sturdy. But the way that the like back bracket covers your screen, if you look up a picture of this gimbal, you'll see what I'm talking about. There's like a bar at the back that covers up the screen and makes it very difficult to, adjust your settings, adjust your aperture, and bullshit like that, white balance, whatever it is. And it even just makes it hard to like see what you're shooting. You kind of have to either like pop out the screen or whatever, which can like throw off the balance a little bit. I don't know. It's just not amazing and kind of a weird design. I'm surprised that no one ever brought up the obvious point of like, hey, maybe this isn't a great design when you can't actually operate the touchscreen or like see what the footage that you're shooting. But anyways, kept the camera pretty sturdy. So maybe if you have like an external monitor or whatever, then you probably wouldn't care too much. But yeah, I didn't love it. In the middle here, we have the Ronin S. These things, I'm not sure what they sell new for. It'd probably be pretty hard to even buy one new. They're kind of an outdated piece of equipment at this point. You could definitely pick one up for less than $500. Like you could probably get one for like $300. I sold mine for about $300. I had this gimbal for a while. Yeah, it's pretty decent. It's early on in the days of Ronin gimbals, and they hadn't quite perfected it, but you could still put it into like flashlight mode. You could still do like the underslung mode. You'd hook it up to your phone, right? You don't have the touchscreen and stuff that they have these days, so you'd be able to like customize everything by hooking it up to your phone. But pretty versatile, and for the time that I had it, I did enjoy it. You guys might be surprised that I didn't put the RS2 here. I actually don't like the RS2 very much. I find that the way that the touchscreen is, I'm always accidentally hitting the touchscreen. But the RS3 that I tried for the first time just last night on a shoot, I love it, honestly. I'm kind of in love with this gimbal right now. Gonna have to probably buy one. They go for about $800. Yeah, I didn't really believe that it would be that much of an improvement over the two, but I have to admit that it is. The footage is like incredibly smooth with this gimbal. It's quite easy to use. There still is like the balancing aspect, and it will take a little bit of time to balance it. It's pretty easy to balance it, I guess. They're getting better at making these things at this point. So, but I didn't find any trouble with the touchscreen, the ability to like turn off the touchscreen, but I wasn't really like hitting it accidentally at any point. And just the fact that you can do this with probably any gimbal, but that you can obviously hook up your buttons on the handle so you can like hit record and stuff like that from the handle. Very, very helpful when you're like shooting events or especially weddings, I imagine, when you're trying to not miss any moments. And yeah, just very impressed with the RS3, and probably going to have to pick one up myself. Maybe there'll be some type of stupid Black Friday deal. But you see what I'm saying, you guys? Like, if you're going to buy it anyways, then it's okay to get those deals, right? The tripod section, that's going to be the last section today. But, I told you guys that we talk about cameras and camera gear for like half an hour, and that is what we have done. Okay, so starting at the worst, it's Tristan's tripod. If Tristan is listening, we both looked for this tripod online. We had a very hard time tracking it down. I don't think they sell it anymore because maybe it was just that terrible. But it was close to the Cameron T310BH. That was the closest thing that I could find to this tripod. The way that you extend the legs, like instead of just having a nice simple clip system like normal tripods do, it had this twisty thing, so you'd have to like twist it all the way, and you had the potential of not making it tight enough. It's just not the type of tripod you'd want to trust even a microphone on, even a light, even I wouldn't trust anything. I wouldn't trust a GoPro on that tripod, to be honest with you guys. Like certainly not a good camera. It's worth it to invest in a decent tripod, and some cheap tripods, like even your shots are going to be a bit wobbly and stuff like that, and just not worth like risking your camera for a cheap tripod. And yeah, this thing was just kind of a piece of garbage. I don't know if Tristan still has it or if he's thrown it out by now. He'll hit me up on Instagram and let me know, I'm sure. The next up, we have the tripod that's holding up my light right now. Cameron T200. There's a 210 as well. I actually own both of them. They are a pretty decent little tripod, like $100 and something. Not a crazy price. Pretty sturdy. Not like the best ever. One of them I actually broke some stuff on, so not like the most durable ever, I'd have to say. But for like $100 and something, I don't know what you can really expect. They are modular, which is cool. You can take like parts off, and if you own a few of these tripods like I do, you can swap out parts, which is pretty interesting. Put like a different head on the tripods and things like that. So that's cool. There's at least that. It's a tripod, holds your camera up. Like, what do you really want, right? And the best tripod that I've ever used, if I was going to buy a fancy tripod, which I might do eventually, the Manfrotto tripods. Manfrotto 500, I think, is the one that I've used before. They're just incredibly sturdy. Your pans and all of that stuff are going to look like super beautiful with those very very professional Manfrotto tripods. So yeah, that's about all the podcasts that I have for everybody today. It's been super exciting to talk about gear and kind of have a walk down memory lane to all of the great, okay, and frankly quite shitty gear that I've used in the past. If you guys want to tell me about some of the shittiest gear you've ever used, you can hit me up on Instagram. That is photo_friends_pod. You can find us on all of the podcast places, and you can also find us on YouTube. We have a Patreon, and we also have a beautiful sponsor, which is CloudSpot. Make sure you check them out. You can get 50% off with the link down below. And for the something random, Scooby-Dooby-Doo.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo. Scooby-Dooby-Doo.
Go watch an episode of Scooby-Doo.